You would not believe how many people are calling me and asking about Wesley Chapel, Florida, a suburb just north of Tampa. Let's get into some of the pros and cons of that area. Here we go. I'm Sam and welcome to the Living in Tampa, Florida channel, where every single week we release videos about what it's like to live, work, play, and move to the Tampa, Florida area. If that's something you want to follow along with, make sure you subscribe, make sure you hit that little bell so you don't miss any videos. I'm also a licensed realtor in the state of Florida, so if you have any real estate specific questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. My phone number and email are right there on the screen and in the description below. Also in the description below, there's a link to my calendar. If you want to just click there and just go ahead and schedule a 30-minute meeting, that is a super easy way to connect with me as well. All right, let's get into Wesley Chapel. I just got off the phone with a man named John who fits the bill for my average caller. He's got a young family, lives in New Jersey, calling from a 201 number, wanting to live in the Tampa suburbs, and has heard about Wesley Chapel. I don't know how Wesley Chapel has done such great marketing to where all these people know about it. It's a big suburb, but it's not that big, and it's the people in this area don't even think that much about it. But they have a lot of new construction there, a lot of new developments, a lot of growth, and they are getting the attention that I think they deserve. But let's get into some of the pros and cons about this area. All right, let's start with the cons. Con number one is distance. Wesley Chapel is kind of a ways out there. It's not really close to Tampa in terms of like the downtown area. It's not super close to the airport. It's about 45 minutes from each of those. And then it's also kind of far from the beaches. So if you're moving to Florida thinking, I want to go to the beach a lot, get ready for a 1 hour plus drive from Wesley Chapel to get to decent beaches. And there's all kinds of beach options, and there's tons of stuff in Wesley Chapel to do. And maybe you're even interested in Wesley Chapel because you saw an ad for the Epperson community, because they have this big, lagoon, crystal lagoon that they call it. And in this community, they have a little beach and a pool and all kinds of activities at this place. I actually had a client reach out to Epperson recently to get on their waiting list, and they didn't have a waiting list. They're just sold out. Also, you hear the bell occasionally. There's a Greek Orthodox church across the street from my office, and it is a Greek Easter this weekend, so the bell is ringing a lot. Just to give you a little context to what's going on around me. Okay, yeah, distance. Wesley Chapel's kind of a ways out there. It actually kind of reminds me of the suburbs around Dallas. I had family that lived in Colleyville and the Grapevine area of Dallas for a while. You see it right here on the map. It's not super close to Dallas, and of course Dallas-Fort Worth is one of the biggest geographical metro areas. And Colleyville felt like its own town out there. It had all these amenities, had all of this kind of structure and infrastructure and school systems and all that kind of stuff. Big football stadiums. And Wesley Chapel feels kind of similar. This whole area is just its own little ecosystem. And if that's something you want, this is a good place. And when I say it has its own ecosystem, it's not just like a concrete jungle. It's not just like, doesn't have its own downtown and things like that. It is very sprawling. It has a lot of trees still within all of these communities. And maybe they level the area where they built the houses and put new trees there in between houses and front yards and stuff. But behind a lot of the houses, you still have a lot of natural water features. You have a lot of natural cypress groups, things like that. So that wraps up con number one, distance. It's kind of a ways out there. If you've got to commute to downtown, it's manageable, but it's kind of frustrating. And you're not alone in that commute. You're commuting down Bruce B. Downs, or even one of the interstates if you're going around this area. And there's a lot of commuters. It's gonna be bumper to bumper traffic. I've heard some people say during like rush hour, it's like an hour and a half to downtown. So that infrastructure will improve over time, but you'd have to deal with that kind of traffic for a while. All right, and that gets into con number 2 is traffic. And mostly commuting related, but also just throughout the area, there's a lot of people moving there, and that creates more traffic. And infrastructure takes a while to catch up to those kind of things. It's not like the traffic will always be bad. Well, it might always be bad, I don't know. I mean, who knows? But right now it is pretty rough, and especially during those rush hour times, getting to work and getting to school, getting back from school when you pick up kids, and then getting home from work. All those times are pretty intense traffic. If you have a job where you can avoid those rush hour times, you might think of this area a little bit differently. And I do have a few clients that are in that kind of situation where, they can go to work at 10 a.m. or maybe they even work a very different shift and they have those kind of options. And that might change the way you perceive this negative of traffic. Okay, con number 3, there is not a lot of local interesting restaurants in this area. And there are some, and there's also a new shopping area kind of being built out of shipping containers. You see something similar in the downtown area. Look at it here. And they're building something similar up by the Grove shopping area, which is kind of in northern Wesley Chapel, where I've heard there's going to be like 35 restaurants. And these will be kind of like food truck style restaurants that are in shipping containers. And I think it will be really cool, and hopefully that will bring in a new influx of good, interesting food to the area. And that will kind of encourage other businesses to move to that area as well. All right, you guys have heard me talk about HOAs and CDDs, homeowners associations, and community development district taxes. These are big things in the Wesley Chapel area, and they're very common in the Wesley Chapel area because of a lot of this new development. And essentially the way this works is a developer, tears out a whole area, builds in roads and infrastructure and things like that, and they borrow money from the state to do that. And then you, as the new residents, pay back that loan over like 30 years. So I've seen these as low as $500 a year, but I've also seen them as high as $4,000 a year in some of the nicer communities like Epperson. So keep that in mind. You might be, if you're like John, the guy from New Jersey, you might be coming here trying to escape some high property taxes. And these kind of sneaky CDD fees are just there, and it's not very clear on listings. If you're looking on Zillow and things like that, it's not very clear. So when you do find a house that you really like, reach out to me and just ask like, hey, what are the other costs with this? And we can kind of dig into it. So those cons, they aren't too bad. But if those are deal breakers for you, I want you to have that information. And I want you to come into your move very informed and confident. Okay, let's get into some of the pros. Number 1, there's a lot of new stuff. New nice stuff, new shopping areas, new schools, new roads. There is a lot of new things that support the community and the growth in this area, and these things are going to continue to grow. Now, whether that's the premium outlet malls over in Lutz, or it's the Wiregrass Mall, or that new container, I don't know what to call that, a mall, a restaurant, park, I don't know what they're gonna call it. It's gonna be cool. But there's a lot of new things like that. And this area, the Wesley Chapel area, kind of overflows into other areas like Lutz and Land O'Lakes, and even down into like Pebble Creek and New Tampa. I kind of think of this whole area on the map as one area, because if you want to live in the North Tampa area and you're needing to commute to downtown or into Tampa, then you're kind of looking at this whole area because it all has a lot to offer. And if you're motivated by schools, let's get into pro number 2, good schools. The Wiregrass school system in southern Wesley Chapel, and then the Steinbrenner High School over in Lutz are some of the best high schools in the area. And best schools are, very subjective. Whenever people tell me they want to be near a really good school, I really try to ask, what does that mean to you? Because that means something very different to everyone. If you just want a school that is very vigilant about bullying or has very high standardized test scores, those are very different kind of things to look for, and we can find those as well. All right, our next pro, these neighborhoods are pretty quiet. They're not all gated, some of them are, but Even the ones that aren't gated are very quiet. People aren't just like wandering through the neighborhoods, and that's really nice. And these neighborhoods are pretty big. It's not like they're just like one little loop of houses. A lot of the time it's, a whole setup with, and then you have parks in there and you have trails in there. And you still have a lot of natural features as well. They leave a lot of lakes, a lot of lagoons, even a lot of trees along the edges and in the middle of these neighborhoods. Not necessarily in the middle of every house, but there's a lot of homes that have very beautiful views out of the back. And that view might just be like a swamp. I feel like swamps kind of get a bad rap. Swamps are actually kind of pretty. And the water comes in and out, the birds come in and out, probably some gators, I don't really know. Gators kind of hide from everybody. They're terrified. And they're like, you see little lizards, we're not scared of the little lizards because they run away from us. Gators are just big lizards that run away from us. Unless you feed them. If you start feeding them, then they're gonna come closer and then you're gonna have the chances of an attack. But these lagoons, these swamps back here are very beautiful. They offer a view that's better than someone's house. In this area, you do also have the opportunity to have a bigger lot. So, you might have neighbors right next to you on both sides, but you might have an opportunity for a bigger yard. You might have opportunity to have, a bigger area around your home in every direction. And this is something you don't get in a lot of the Tampa area because it is a metro area. This Wesley Chapel area gets a little more like suburban, rural, and creates some of those opportunities for bigger lot sizes. All right, here's the final pro for Wesley Chapel area. There's a lot of young families. So if you're moving here with a young family, a lot of other people are too. And that is going to create a nice community in this area. It's going to mean neighbors that you want to get to know, that you want to spend time with, and other things that support a young community, whether it's schools and classes and activities and sports and all these kind of things that young families want are going to continue to get better and better in the Wesley Chapel area as young families move to the area. All right, so these were some of the pros and cons of the Wesley Chapel area. I hope you found this information useful. If you did, please hit that like button. It's always helpful for me to get that feedback from you. Again, here's my number and email and calendar link is down in the description below if you want to reach out about your move or potential move to the Wesley Chapel area or anywhere in the greater Tampa area. Thanks for coming by.